There's this new show. It's going to come out really soon. It's February 12th. It's going to come out on FX. It's called The Love Story. Am I getting that correct? Yep, The Love Story. And it is about Carolyn Bessette and John F. Kennedy Jr. And we're supposed to believe that this was the love story of the century. Now, it's like a biopic show, it's like multi-episoded show of these, elites living in 1990s New York City. Now, the premise I'm loving, but it is a little ghoulish, especially when we recall pictures like this. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise, and today we have the Friday News Roundup. Now, since I'm not reading a book, every day around here is the Friday News Roundup. So there was a part of me that was like, will there still be stories to tell on Friday when I'm supposed to be giving the news roundup? It's like I'm not even a citizen of the world. Of course there's stories for Friday. There's only too many things to talk about. So I got to jump right in. The first person we're talking about today is Meghan. We haven't talked about her in a week. Can you believe it? Last time we were talking, we were discussing what the hell with those extensions that the person doing her hair had exposed to all of us. I mean, that wasn't the main point of what we were talking about, but we got that in there. Meghan, of course, it has been in the news repeatedly lately for firing all manner of people, and I'm wondering why she hasn't fired the person who did her hair like this. Anyway, she's back in the news again. There's always some little news story, but mostly it's because all of us are over here just collecting data points for all the time that Meghan and Harry lie to us. And if these were just a couple of snakes in the grass who were owning their snaky ways, then we wouldn't really care that they lied to us. I mean, who isn't lying to us, quite frankly? But the fact that they've tried to construct a narrative where they're the greatest truth tellers known to man, that they went to England and Meghan tried to expose truth to those people, but, you can't speak truth to some power, and they'd thrown her right out of the house. And, then she'd come to California, and she just was really struggling mightily to find her place in that world, even though she claims that that state is her home and that she's, grown up in the business. Somehow, for somebody who should have an enormous amount of connections, having grown up in the area and had a dad who was in the industry and who grew up in the industry and used to have jobs in the industry, somehow can't find a foothold now. Really, let that sit, you guys. There are people who come from the middle of America nowhere and somehow manage to make it in Hollywood, having had no family connections, nobody in the industry giving them a leg up, and yet somehow they make it. Harry and Meghan come to California, and despite the fact that she should have an enormous leg up in the area, and Harry, being a prince, you think would have all doors open to him, those two can't ruin enough deals fast enough. It's almost like they're trying to be a train wreck. It's hard for me to imagine anybody saying that they were working hard at life to have so many overwhelming schemes and plans and hopes and dreams dashed upon every rock that can be found. Like, you've never seen people who are greater failures than these two. Well, of course, Meghan wanted us all to believe that even though you can't remember it, she is kind of a staple in the lifestyle brand sphere, And even though you never, ever check the TIG a day in your life, she would have you believe that prior to meeting Harry, she was just on the cusp of the greatest explosive lifestyle brand there could ever be, a Joanna Gaines, if you will. But unfortunately, she met and married the love of her life right when she was about to become Martha Stewart. And while she doesn't fault Harry for that, the truth is her heart always longed to go back to what she was truly destined to be, which is the person who's supposed to develop your taste for you. She decided to do that by making jam, because the one thing that's been missing from your ability to be a tastemaker in your own life is a really good jar of jam. So she began to make the jam, and she would have you believe that she is this pinnacle of excellence when it comes to the female in business. So much so that she felt that she had to have a podcast on the subject. Okay, a female founders with her as the voice. And there's never been a less helpful podcast. Number one, it was boring as hell. But then number two, she never asked any of the right questions. It was all basically her wanting these people to come and talk about their relationship to her. But I'm like, I want tips and tricks on how to become better at business. I guess this was the wrong podcast to come to, even though it says a female founder. And me as a female was wondering how to become a founder. You're not going to learn there. So of course that podcast came to nothing, just like her previous podcast had come to nothing. Anyway, she would have us believe that she's over there, it started out as a cottage industry and then suddenly just blew up beyond anything she could have ever imagined. And she and Netflix were in league together so that her jam business could really come to something. It's basically going to teach you how, even though you're lazy as shit, you can still make a beautiful living arrangement, even though you're only ever willing to repackage some peanut butter pretzels. That doesn't mean that you can't be a Montecito queen too. And so she had come to basically tell you how to elevate the moment and care for people, and how the little details were the way that you let people know that even though you completely ignored them for the majority of the time, you did leave ice cream on their doorstep one time. So you're a good friend. Of course, the only reason she had this show was as a very long infomercial about all of her jams, her dry biscuits, her disgusting teas. And this extended infomercial that went from not one season but two on Netflix, even though, as we all know, it was all filmed as one season, but they cut it up into two to give you the veneer that she was really a successful person who had 2 seasons of a show on Netflix. Even though she was over here using Netflix to prop up her little jam company, and even though she went everywhere to let you know that as soon as you were able to buy the jam, it sold right out, you know, that she just had never expected to be so successful, but that even though all the naysayers want to drag her online, the truth is she has a very loyal group of people who just can't wait to buy her delicious jam. And we knew she was lying, and we've been knowing she was lying. It's never been a question in our minds. Is Meghan a truth teller? Is there truly success at the end of her jam spoon? Has Meghan Markle developed a product that is kind of a must-have, like this trendy item that only the cool kids have? Could it be? I mean, after all, she did give us some keepsake packaging so that when we're done with the jam, we can then use the jar to put in a daisy. Even a cardboard carton that I could grace my mantle with. She went so far as to make the packaging something I'd want to keep later, even though it's just a piece of cardboard and I could find this in the inside of my toilet paper. Anyway, all this to say, she's gone to great lengths to make you believe that she was very successful. But as we've reported here on this show, we know that she wasn't. One individual had the very cunning idea to sort of circumnavigate these claims that she was selling out. And they went to the website and put an enormous amount of jams that they intended to buy. And then, of course, they got a feedback message saying, oh, I'm sorry, we can't provide you with 50,000 jars of jam. We only have 40,000 jars of jam left. And it's like, first of all, quite clever on the person's part who thought of that one. But these claims that Meghan had that they'd sold out, we knew were a lie, but it's just surprising that it would be such a bold-faced lie. On the one hand, if you'd only stocked like 20 jars of jam, then you could legitimately say we're sold out. And I can't argue with that. Technically you are, even though you provided no product. But the fact that she would lie to us, and then it is rather easy to find out that she wasn't telling the truth, yet another data point. But the latest story in the jam debacle is the fact that when Netflix cut ties with her, they had rooms full of jams and candles. That for whatever reason, Netflix had an enormous amount of these products, I suppose to send as gifts or just to have at the office for people to sample. You cannot imagine how hard they're having to work to get rid of the product that they have just sitting around in closets. If this was this item, this kind of trendy, super cool, like, oh my gosh, I got to get my hands on that. If it was that kind of a product, like, do you guys remember when Starbucks had that ridiculous bear-shaped cup and the workers were supposedly hoarding the cup and nobody could get their hands on this bear-shaped cup and it was like the hot thing, super trendy? Meghan would have you believe her jams are like that. Why is it that the Netflix people are having to send this junk and these items to other content creators like, hey, you want some of this jam? You know, I mean, I know y'all are all talking about the jam. You want to like sample some for your show or whatever. And Dana Bowling, who we've discussed before, was given a candle from these Netflix closet. I mistakenly said that Netflix had a shop. I was trying to figure out why they had all this product on hand. So I was thinking, was there like a link or something where you could buy her products from Netflix? Because Netflix does with other shows have links where you can buy certain products. I think Stranger Things is like that. And so I had mistakenly thought that Netflix might have a link like that, and that was why they had so much product. No, they just have it. Because there's so much of it and nobody wants it that Meghan was over there bringing boxes to the Netflix people. Y'all want some of my jam? No. No, we don't. So right now she's trying to get all of you to believe that the one thing that everybody wants for Valentine's Day is like a trio of her jams. You guys, strawberry is now available. I've always thought strawberry jam was disgusting, particularly when there's like chunks of the strawberry in it. It reminds me of an open wound with scabs. I don't know. Strawberry jam I can't get into. I like the flavor, but the texture is a real problem for me. Anyway, she is now hawking her scab jam for Valentine's Day. And if you'll believe it. She has brought back those chocolates. Who wants some white chocolate with some cookie crumbles in it? Stale cookie crumbles and white chocolate, anybody? Harry'd love some. This is also the chocolate that's got like bee pollen in it. Maybe that was a white chocolate. Maybe the white chocolate came with the bee pollen. There's another dark chocolate I think that comes with raspberry jam, and then there's like another atrocity somewhere. Cookie crumbles are in maybe the milk chocolate. Maybe it's milk chocolate with cookie crumbles, white chocolate with bee pollen and flowers. And then, of course, the dark with the raspberry jam. Don't you find it interesting that Harry would pick the white chocolate with the flower sprinkles and the bee pollen? The white chocolate, though. Well, he chooses chocolate like he chooses his women. Okay, now the other story that I want to talk to you guys about today is the crazy story of the Kiss Cam Coldplay couple lives on like you would not believe it. Only in America could the person who made a fool of herself come out, and now Kristen Cabot, the woman who stood there shocked, awed, and humiliated because she was caught having an affair, turns her back on the camera and is now turning her face to speak at a PR crisis conference where she's going to tell you how to handle the biggest crisis of your life. Is she coming as an example of what not to do? Because that's what she should be there to do. Yes, she had a crisis, but the lady wants to resurrect the crisis at every turn of the way. Would PR not remind you that nobody's got the attention span longer than a gnat? And if somebody does or says something stupid, your greatest tactic is to never bring it up again because they will forget. The cycle, the news cycle. The only people who are going to remember are the people that you sinned against, And, well, I hate the fact that her family is having to endure the trauma of what they experienced because she wanted to go have a good time at a Coldplay concert. And even if the whole world misunderstood what was happening in that instance, as she says, me and my husband were already separated, I wasn't doing anything wrong, except that you were, because the man you were with was not separated from his wife. So it doesn't really matter what you were up to. Your actions still affected his dear family. Anyway, she's coming to make money off of this instance, and now she's taking speakers' fees to explain how you ought to handle yourself in a crisis. Sister girl, the last thing I want to do is handle myself in a crisis the way you have handled yourself in this one. We would have all forgotten this happened. If somebody would have been like, remember that time? Then you'd have been like, oh yeah, that was weird. And then you would have not had another thought about it. But who keeps coming? 2 articles back to back. Was it the New York Times and the Times of London? You guys, I was really transgressed against America when they tried to make a real big deal of the fact that I had an affair publicly. And yes, I was having an affair publicly, but that was nobody's business but my own. It would appear that you don't know how it is and how the world works. If you want to go out and act a fool on stage, people got nothing better to do than talk about it. So then for you to I'm going to write 2 articles where I act shocked and awed that this ever happened. And then to be like, I will now be collecting speakers' fees so that I can tell you how to handle yourself in a crisis. The people who are putting on this conference about how to handle yourself in a crisis and decide to hire Kristen Cabot as their spokesperson for successfully navigating the choppy waters of internet content. Let me just tell you, don't put any of your money into that PR firm. That this would be their spokesperson. This is the anti-version of success in the realm of PR crisis. Somebody else who's having a continual crisis, and perhaps she should find a conference to attend, though not this one, would be Sarah Ferguson. Now, as I said yesterday, the Epstein emails are continuing to rear their head in the news cycle. Sarah Ferguson, who is no stranger to the Epstein drama and who was extensively dragged in the book that we read together about Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, and Sarah Ferguson. And we talked about from that book entitled how her relationship with Epstein spans decades. She's known that guy for ages. But the drama for her recently are new emails where it appeared that she had zero cause for concern when it came to her daughters being around this convicted pedophile. It just seems to me that if I knew that a person had been in jail for soliciting the prostitution of a minor, I wouldn't need to know much more than that to be like, I will never darken the doorstep. I believe that there were hundreds of celebrities who crossed paths with Epstein and didn't realize who he was. It's not like he was out in the street, So I believe that there was a lot of people, I think there was a lot of people who did know what he was up to and decided to turn a blind eye and think, well, if he can open up another door for me, I'll just not worry too much about what he does in his private life. Who am I to judge? The problem is, who aren't you to judge? All you have to do is walk through life judging one scenario or another. Should I be in this situation? Should I be in that situation? Should I know that person? Should I not know that person? You're judging all day long. It's so weird to me that all these people are like, who am I to judge? You're going to tell me you walk through life not making judgments every single day about what you should or shouldn't do? Suddenly be like, I don't know. And so I don't have any patience for this. I just didn't want to judge him in his personal life. Well, the police judged him and found him wanting, and that's why he was in jail, even though it was a sweetheart deal. So anyway, Sarah Ferguson decided not to judge his personal life. And to such an extent that she was over there arranging lunches so that her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie and herself, could go and dine with Epstein while they were in Miami. This is a person who, when everything was coming down around her head, continued to hang her hat on the fact that she was a wonderful mother. No one could take that from her, except her own self. She's taken the title of wonderful mother right out of her own hands because she's over here arranging lunches with Epstein. And then there's another set of emails where she's like, I can't wait to see you. We're looking so forward to it. I can't give you exact dates about when we'll be able to be there. Unfortunately, Eugenie is away on a shagging weekend. So I'm still waiting for her to come back and then we can confirm dates. Why are you talking to Epstein about your daughter's shagging weekend? By the way, why is your daughter having a shagging weekend? Anyway, when she's telling him about all of these things that her daughters are up to, why are you talking to this old man about what your daughter's up to? Whether you condone her shagging weekend or not, that's not Epstein's business. She probably thought she was being so hilarious. I'm just so funny. I'm just so casual. Just cash, Sarah, She doesn't get her knickers in a bunch about anything. She'll just say whatever, Better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Am I right? Anyway, I think her daughters are finding it really hard for them to even look at their parents in the face. I mean, their dad is just an absolute clown show. But then their mom is also the she-clown show. There was never two people better suited for each other than Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Both of those two people are cut from the same cloth. Bunch of clowns. And their poor daughters are just like looking around like, which way do we turn? You're going to try to tell me that Beatrice and Eugenie have not found themselves in some nefarious rooms and in some dark situations? Please. Those two girls have put up with so much from their parents publicly that, can you imagine what's been going on privately with those two girls? And I'm not saying that they were willing participants even. I'm just saying there is a part of me that feels like they've probably been victimized since they were little bitty kids. If you ask me, those pictures that came out where Sarah Ferguson was, out in the south of France with that boyfriend and he's got that little child and she's got nothing on and he's just got her on the knee. Like, I'm telling you this much right now. A married woman who takes her boyfriend to the south of France so that he can sit around with the naked child on his knee, that's not a scenario that anybody living a morally upright life would find themselves in. Okay, and you're going to tell me that those poor girls haven't just faced an onslaught of trouble their whole lives, which is probably why they were able to stand by their parents so successfully for so long, because it's like their whole world's upside down. What would seem normal in your house? Let me remind you that Sarah Ferguson is the woman who, with her daughters in the house, would order an entire meal spread out. A full leg of lamb, chickens, pork, a full banquet. And then she and her daughters would go and sit in the living room and eat a bag of chips. We won't have that dinner tonight, even though we requested that you make every kind of pasta that there is. 10 dishes of pasta set out. They would demand that a spread be put out, and then they'd go sit and eat potato chips in the living room while they watch TV. Get too full on the bags of potato chips and just abandon the banquet. But every night this would happen. That is such a weird scenario to find yourself in, where just enormous amounts of food are wasted every single day. And that's not even really, I was going to say it's not a morally questionable thing. It kind of is. Waste on that level. We've got moral problems here. But what I'm saying is, if your life consisted of such mundane moments as enormous amounts of food wasted on a daily basis while you and your mom gorged yourselves on potato chips in front of the TV while a banquet sat behind you, that's a weird scenario. And then in other realms of your life, as a child, you're sitting naked on the knee of your mother's boyfriend while she runs away from your dad. What I'm telling you right now is her life has been so full of just like weird and random scenarios that I don't even know if they would know which way is up, which way is down, what is right, what is left. So poor Beatrice and Eugenie, the people I feel sorry for now are them. I hope that they can get things sorted. Somebody who's really struggling to get himself sorted, not surprisingly, is Andy Dick. I've always wondered, is that his real name, or is that the name is that like a stage name to describe his behavior? I don't know. It's a story that I've seen circulating for a month now, and I really don't care. Mostly because, I mean, he's not a funny comedian. He's just an outrageous buffoon. But, like, he knows that he is. I mean, that's his reputation in Hollywood.
I'm like, Andy has never acted like not a train wreck dick grabber.
15 years ago was talking about how he'd been in rehab like 30 times. I mean, like, his whole life is do something dumb, go to rehab. Do something dumb, go to rehab. Do something dumb, go to rehab. And the fact that he's still alive makes me feel he should be studied by science. But he's still alive. He's not doing well because a month ago he had this huge, terrible episode on the street where he was with some friends who, in my opinion, look like a couple of clingers on. He was with these clingers on who he's been convinced are his friends, and they had a whole day planned. And then he ran away from them to go, I don't know, do drugs or something. And he had done some drugs, but then he also found this guy on the street corner, and he felt bad for him, so he says, but I think he had found a person who probably had drugs. So he sat down next to the guy, and the guy's telling him about how he's real sad because he's lost his family and his kids and all of this. So then Andy Dick decides to participate in whatever substances this man was taking to dull the pain of loss. And this is the way Andy tells the story.
Out to hang out with Andy. Adam had a whole entire day planned, and he got away. He got away from us for a few minutes. He did something that messed him up, and I had to run get some Narcan. But it was a group effort of all of our friends that saved him.
There was a guy that was my age and I felt for him. He had kids. Did you know that part? He had kids, and he was depressed, and he was on the sidewalk, and I'm like, I'll sit with you. And then he whipped out, I'm sorry, but crack. And I'm like, you know what? I might need a little bit of that. I wanted to see what he was doing. And also, I don't mind doing a little crack every now and then.
Who sits down next to a person to comfort them, and when they pull crack out, you think, well, I might as well. Not firing on all cylinders. Anyway, I don't know what was in the crack, but it really sent Andy over. And so then he had an episode, and he died. But then he came back to life, and then he went to rehab.
Next thing you know, it's on video, and you're just done, dude.
Yeah.
You're like fucking...
Well, I died. Like,
did you die?
That's what they say. They say, like, my heart stopped, and I stopped breathing. And they had to use that stuff, Narcan. Well, I came to, sat up, and I said, where's the vodka? No, you didn't. I swear to God. On everybody's life, I said, where's the vodka? I needed it. I felt like I needed it.
I just wonder at people like this. I just wonder, like, how are they still functioning? What is their life? Everyone knows he's like a social wart. On whatever event he's at, it's like, oh, Andy's here. But how is he still here? And I don't mean like alive, but I mean like how is he even associated with the industry? He was a comedian at one point, but I don't even think he was a funny comedian. I don't think anybody liked him. Like what is his role in all of it? Because everyone's got a role. Everyone's got a part to play. What's his role in the grand scheme and in the ugly web of Hollywood? What's the point of Andy Dick? I mean, there are people who have been banished from Hollywood who can't get work. And I'm not saying that Andy's working consistently, but like people are aware of him. People are still like, what's going on with Andy? I'm talking about it. I don't even know who this person is, really. I mean, what was he on? The last thing he was on was like what? That show that Joe Rogan was on when he was like 20? I can't think of one thing that I have ever seen Andy Dick in that made any sense. But he's still here. There's still news stories about him. He's still a topic, still a trending topic. Okay, let's get an update on what's going on with Savannah Guthrie's mom. Now, there were certain ransom notes attached to this case, but never having been sent to the family. These ransom notes were kind of clunkily written, like with such phrases as do this or else. And they didn't really establish a clear directive to the family about what needed to be done, which made certain FBI agents who have looked at this feel like it's not a serious ransom note. First of all, you would send your ransom note to the people who you think can do something about it, the people you're threatening, the family. You would kidnap a member of the family and then threaten the family. Why would you kidnap a member of the family and then go tell the media this is what we want? Go tell the family this is what you want, right? So Anyway, these ransom notes have long since raised eyebrows ever since anybody heard about them because, first of all, they weren't at the scene of the crime. They weren't sent directly to the family. They were sent, like I said, to TMZ and days later. So they might have certain bits of information in the notes, but the thing is, that information was already out there in the public, so anybody who's been keeping abreast of the story could have written these ransom notes. They also ask for Bitcoin. Just the requests are not what anybody and how they're being requested, not anything anybody understands. Now, at 5 o'clock last night, that was one of the first deadlines. It came and went. Savannah said in a statement that she'd made to the public with her 2 siblings, we know about these ransom notes, but the thing is, if you can't give us proof of life, then we can't give any attention to what you're asking for in these ransom notes, because in a day and age where, video and all kinds of messaging can be manipulated with AI, how are we supposed to just believe you when you say, even if you give us a voicemail, even if you give us a picture, like, how do we know that that means she's really alive? So they wanted some very definitive proof before they followed through with these ransom notes. Ransoms, as you know, are not really common. This isn't exactly Charles Lindbergh's baby, I don't know. This feels like silent era film type stuff, right? So nobody's really doing ransom notes anymore. So there was a man in connection to one of these ransom notes that we've already had big questions about. There's an LA man who was arrested in connection with these ransom notes. So as everybody has suspected, this is just like an outside player, an interloper trying to get in on some of this, trying to get a little fame, little notoriety, maybe a little Bitcoin out of it, arrested. So that's just like a side circus that's going on. One of the things that has come up that I find to be quite compelling, and I'm like, is this true information or are we just muddying the waters? I don't know what's going on. But there was another press conference yesterday. People are finding the sheriff frustrating. They don't feel like he is a clear talker, a clear communicator, and he does kind of waffle on some points. So people are like highly frustrated. I mean, he's got to hold his cards close to the chest while at the same time feeding the rabid mob what they want so that they'll not accuse him of doing a cover-up. So, it's a tightrope, and so some of his answers are a little bit not great, but I think it would behoove them to get a better communicator in his spot just to give this man a little breathing room, but he's doing the best he can as far as we know. But in this presser, the sheriff was giving a really clear minute by minute timeline of everything that we know about Nancy's last movements, Nancy obviously being Savannah's mother. And what I think is really interesting is that they are no longer saying on this timeline that she was at church the night before she went missing. So the church element is very, very suspicious to me. Nancy Guthrie was said to have been at a church mahjong event, and that her son-in-law, it's been confirmed now that it was her son-in-law, brought her back to the house, and that he dropped her off at 9:50 from the church mahjong event. Now, is it just me, or is 9:50 crazy late for an 84-year-old to be going to bed? As a person who regularly goes to bed at 9:30, I would be in bed by 8:30 if it was possible. But anyway, 9:30, I'm in the bed. I cannot even imagine rolling back up to my house at 10 o'clock at night and still having to get ready for bed and all the things. No. But anyway, she's rolling back up to the house at 9:50. On this newest timeline, before we were told that he was bringing her home from the mahjong event. Now we're being told that at 5:30, she had gone to a family event, they had her over at the house. And I believe an Uber driver brought her over to the family's house. And then the son-in-law drove her back home. Well, what I find interesting is what happened to church mahjong. Now she's over at a family's house, right? And the reason this is interesting is that we've been told that the family was notified the following day when she didn't come to church. Somebody called and was like, hey, Nancy wasn't here. Is Nancy doing okay? And that alerted the family to go over to her house and be like, is Nancy okay? But in the Daily Mail, somebody was saying that ever since COVID, Nancy had stopped attending church and that she didn't come to church anymore. And she just watched the church service from her home. A lot of church services will air their service on YouTube or Facebook or something. So that's how Nancy was watching it, which makes sense. You're an older lady. You live by yourself. It'd be a lot easier to just watch the church service at home. This is interesting to me because other people have said, well, maybe Nancy's changed churches since, back when you knew she used to come. Maybe what you don't realize is that Nancy just goes to a separate church now, and she just didn't call you to let you know that she changed churches. But what's interesting to me is I think, when I heard that, I think, okay, this is confusing to me. Because if you could go to the church mahjong event, why could you not then also attend a Sunday service? So you're well enough to go play mahjong at church, but not well enough to go to the service? That didn't make sense to me. But now that we're being told that it was not mahjong she was over at the family's house, then it makes sense with the tip that she no longer attended church in person, but chose to watch a digital version of the service. But then that raises the question of, then how did the family know that Nancy was in peril? Were they just coming to hang over out at Grandma's house? We're told that the family came to her house because they were told that she wasn't at church. If she doesn't go to church, why would anyone call? So now it's all convoluted again. The other thing I think is interesting too is, if I went to a church and there was an older person who I often saw at church, but I didn't see her one Sunday, I don't think I would call the person's family and be like, Nancy's not here. Because apparently they got the call at like 11:56, or they got over to her house at 11:56, but she'd been called like right around the time of church. Somebody had called the family, Nancy's not here, Nancy's not here. Would you call the family if you saw somebody wasn't at church? Like, I would just assume like Nancy must not feel well. If Nancy was indeed playing mahjong till 10 last night, Nancy might not feel capable of coming next day, to early service. But I don't know. Like, I find it interesting that somebody would find it like necessary to call the family because of somebody's absence at church. Like, that would have to be like a heavy duty churchgoer if you would call because this person isn't there. But now we're being told by other people in that same church, Nancy didn't attend church. This is what I want. I want the family to come out and give us some clarifiers. Was the mother at church? Does the family support Tommaso or Tomas? I've heard both. Does the family support the brother-in-law? It seems to me that if my brother-in-law were being erroneously attacked, and I knew that he wasn't the sort of person who would do any of this, and I knew there were rumors about him, like, I have been able to come out and say, everybody please pray for my mother. I think it would also come out and be like, by the way, my brother-in-law didn't do this. So y'all can just pipe down over there in your crazy corners of the internet. I don't know. I feel like I've been very confusing in this segment because I don't know what to think about it, so I've thrown a lot of things at you guys. My main point is, there's one narrative that says she was playing mahjong and then wasn't able to attend church the next day. Somebody got frightened by that and called the family. The family comes to the house, sees that Nancy's missing, calls the police, and then everything else unfolds. And now there's another narrative. Oh, Nancy was at her family's house. Nancy doesn't even attend church. Nancy's friends would never have called to say that Nancy was missing. Well, if Nancy wasn't missing, why did the family suddenly come and check? Did they come and check because potentially they were in on the fact that Nancy's missing? So we've got two tracks here, and nobody's clarifying anything. Now, I'm not super invested in the Winter Olympics, if I'm totally honest with you, but I do love some ice skating. I had no idea. This is truly, I live under a rock, quite frankly, or in a closet. I didn't realize how high fashion some of these costumes are. And I don't mean the ice skating costumes. I mean, like, for the whole Olympic team. The designers who design for the Olympic team is stunning. Like, some of this work is unbelievable. And I am only just now realizing that this is a thing. I just didn't realize. Anyway, I saw this guy talking about it and blew my mind on some of these countries and what they're producing. Now, Canada, I'm sorry, but you did not get the high fashion. Unfortunately, Lululemon was in charge of Canada's costumes. And I think everyone is in general dismay. Although, what were you expecting from Lululemon? Meanwhile, America has Ralph Lauren. And we're coming up with this all-American number. I'm loving the traditional American appeal of all of this. But not to be left out, let's look at Mongolia. And I think these costumes were from a couple of Olympics back. But all I'm here to tell you this much right now is that I didn't realize that Olympic fashion was a thing. Where have I been? Can we take a look at these costumes? I mean, what I love about all of this is, there's the element of national pride and like the display of certain national costumes and identities within the clothes. Certain motifs will show up in the different patterns of the outfits. I don't know what's happening with Canada. What could you expect Lululemon to do for you, except for this, honestly? But like, look over here what's going on with these Haitian costumes. First of all, Haitian and the Winter Olympics feels like I don't understand. But they did understand the assignment of coming up with costumes that represented the country. Stunning, let me just say. And the British, they did not come to play either. I mean, it's no Mongolian costume, but I'm loving, just so long as you don't show up like the Canadians. Canada, we really love you, and we really hate that this had to happen to you. I don't know what was going on here. But what I do know is that I'm going to need to be a little bit more invested in some of the excellence coming out of the fashion houses for the Winter Olympics. Am I the only one who didn't realize that this was a massive thing? Probably. Anyway, I'm loving. Okay, something that I am not loving, and then this really does have to be the last thing I say. I had a whole spiel on Halle Berry and the fact that she's now engaged now, but we'll save that for another day, because I need to wrap it up. Do you guys know that there's this new show? It's going to come out really soon. It's February 12th. It's going to come out on FX. It's called The Love Story. Am I getting that correct? Yep, The Love Story. And it is about Carolyn Bessette and John F. Kennedy Jr. And we're supposed to believe that this was the love story of the century. Now, it's like a biopic show, it's like multi-episoded show of these, elites living in 1990s New York City. Now, the premise I'm loving, but it is a little ghoulish, especially when we recall pictures like this. Now, I just want to remind you that these are people who were in such grave disagreements that Carolyn didn't even want to be in that plane that he was flying when he shouldn't have been flying with his broken foot. And I want to remind you that the crash was so violent that his body was severed in half. Okay? They didn't even ever find his torso. So I think for them to make a show wanting to tell us about this great love story, this is why people don't know their history, because they watch TV and they don't read the books. This was not a great love story. These people were a horrible fit for each other. She was a cocaine addict who was struggling with anorexia and mental health issues all the livelong day. He was an egomaniac and a narcissist, okay? When I tell you that the two fires that burned in the two of them, developed an absolute atomic bomb of hatred when the two of them were together. This is not a love story. This is a love story. This is a hate story. These people got together thinking that the other one could really improve their image. And, they were two good-looking people in 1990s New York, It's a story I'd want to watch if we didn't already know that the fact that the backstory is a nightmare. Like an absolute nightmare. These people hated each other. It's not like a difficult love story, but truly, there was so much that bonded them. It isn't. And if you don't believe me, you can go back and watch the coverage I did of Maureen Callahan's book, Ask Not. I had some problems with that book, but overall, if you don't know the main story, she's there to tell you the main story. Are you going to find out anything you didn't know? Maybe. Maybe. I didn't realize how much these people hated each other or how dumb RFK Jr. really was. That was all news to me. I know he was like the heartthrob of the 90s, and no one's going to deny that man got all the good genes the Kennedys had to offer. But was this a love story between him and Carolyn? You guys, get your head screwed back on and go watch my coverage of Ask Not, okay? All right, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I so appreciated it, and I will see you guys on Monday. Bye.